Hello, and welcome to this latest release of audio from WasteBuild. My name's Fraser, and the idea with these recordings is to open up the content from our live event held in Amsterdam last December to as many relevant and interested architects, designers, engineers, developers, anyone really involved with the built environment, to open it up to as many people as possible to really try to accelerate our transition towards a circular construction industry. As consumers of 50% of raw materials and generators of 39% of all carbon emissions, decarbonising the built environment sector and using circular solutions instead of the traditional linear ones is one of the most effective ways of tackling the climate emergency. In other words, the ambition for WasteBuild and for sharing the incredible content from our speakers is to inspire our audience and help to understand how we can start to tackle the climate emergency one project, one specification at a time. Up until now, we've been sharing whole sessions in one recording, so up to an hour of content. But based on some early feedback, we're going to break these sessions up into the individual presentations, so a much more manageable 10 to 15 minute video. This presentation is from Pinar Guvenc from the New York and Istanbul based architects, Eray Carbajo. The session Pinar contributed to is called What is Holding Us Back and How Can We Overcome? And I love the fact that her presentation doesn't just look at the built environment, but takes inspiration from a cross-section of sizes and sectors from across the world. I also love the importance of collaboration that comes through, something that we at WasteBuild couldn't agree more with. Do remember to follow, like and subscribe to our social channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube, to keep up with the latest information from WasteBuild and keep an eye on the website, wastebuild.com. Now, on with the session. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pinar Guvenc, and I'm the managing partner of Eray Carbajo. We are an architecture and design studio that is based in New York City and Istanbul with the mission of creating concepts that address urban, social, and environmental problems. And as a young and growing firm, I want to talk today about how we try to approach the topic of circularity and really incorporate it into our designs and new concepts. So I'm gonna, for the sake of time, just gonna skip through some slides. Okay. So when we talk about circularity, this is the most common graph, or a variation of this is what we see, right? And we've seen this multiple times over the past 2 days, probably. So we now have a clear understanding of all the steps that are required in order to realize a circular model. But what is not often discussed enough is the ingredient in between these steps that enable all of them to happen. And that is really collaboration. And as a young firm, this is really how we make circular collaborative models happen in our own projects. So because we have a big mission, we sort of act like a research lab, and on a day-to-day basis, there are many topics that we try to address, right? So waste is just one of the problems that we're facing in the world, not to depress ourselves, but as a reminder to us that there are so many things that are happening in the world that we need to address. We talk about so many villains within climate change, but we rarely mention how media is one of the biggest endorsers of consumer capitalism, which is one of the main causes of climate change through its built-in obsolescence and push to consume more and more. Congratulations, loneliness is considered as a public health crisis at the moment. There's a big gap between food supply and food access, where still we're throwing tons and tons of food away every year just because of inefficient logistics or poor business models. And we're presented with these big goals, and circularity being one of them, but how do we engage these into our day-to-day and really apply these as, regardless of the size of your company, your resources, the time you have, the people you have on board. And when you look at studies or research on why so many businesses or people don't incorporate circularity in their day-to-day, is really they consider it inconvenient. They say there's not enough time, or they don't have enough resource to execute it, and they just try to go by day to execute their operations, so they can't really think about it. So really how we can implement circularity that is not only feasible but repetitive to create a sustainable model and also potentially address multiple problems at the same time is through strategic and diverse collaborations. So I want to talk about a few projects that we have explores not only circularity, but different type of innovations that may enable future architectural innovation or in construction. And one really fun project is a collaboration with University of California, Riverside. So as architects and designers, we're keenly aware that we need to have good understanding of materials, and especially potential of new materials and their applications in design. And if several years ago, we came across this material that was developed at UCR that was dubbed as sponge. Sponge is a super hydrophobic and oleophilic material, meaning it repels water and absorbs any oil and oil-based contamination. It is highly porous, so it's super light, and it can absorb much higher than its own weight. And also, it has thermal insulation characteristics. And on top of all of that, the greatest interest to us was that it was derived by sugar, and potentially from waste sugar that they could retrieve through agriculture, whether that is tomato residue or even from vineyards. So it not only presented these crazy application opportunities, but also because of its reuse of material and turning it to material innovation, it was actually an affordably scalable product that could be applied in many different things. So we were immediately fascinated about the potential. Maybe this can be a cleanup material in construction sites, or it can be a new type of building insulation material that is very thin, is sustainable, and it's way thinner, so it's probably even allowing for more floor area for developers, which I'm sure all developers in the world would care about a lot more than anything else. So instead of jumping into that right away, we decided to prototype it in a much smaller scale and on a different type of skin. So that's how we actually created Sponge into SpongeSuit, with the concept of clean as you swim. So the idea was that as people wear this collectively, this would not only raise awareness around environmental pollution, but raise the conversation of how, through simply wearing, we can be environmentally proactive, and also through collective wearing, we can potentially make environmental impact. So this very sexy design really allowed us to raise not only awareness, but it went viral. So I think the opportunity here that we have as architects and designers and creatives in general is to raise these awareness projects that could actually start real conversation with the real partners. This awareness really enabled us to meet the collaborators that we had to. We got into different incubators such as Climate Kick and Plug and Play in California, and we got funding from EU in order to further do research on this material, which is now we're slowly still moving towards our long-term goal in applying this as a building skin. Another example I would like to talk about is a collaboration with a nonprofit organization called Open Style Lab. Open Style Lab is an organization that was originated at MIT with the mission of making style accessible to people with disabilities. As architects, we already feel that the conversation around accessibility is insufficient, even in built environment. And if you think about fashion, there's really no regulation for accessibility at all. So when they came to us for a exhibition design that they were going to do at Parsons School of Design in order to showcase some of the garments that they created for people with aging and disabilities, we looked at the industry, and the number one problem before I even started with the space, the industry itself was not inclusive. So how are we going to showcase these garments? So with this in mind and the universal design principles in mind, we created a very simple looking but very sophisticatedly thought through place where from font to color to height differences to textures to user interfaces and through custom built body forms that we would create a space that was fully accessible and more inclusive to the mass. And while we were doing this project, we were like, how can this problem of inclusion in the fashion industry can turn into an opportunity of circularity as well? So of course, fashion industry itself is very wasteful, and they actually waste a lot of textiles during the production process, or even, just through poor consumption and fast fashion. So now we're actually prototyping the body form version 2, where we're not only incorporating scraped wood into our body forms, but also incorporating waste textile into the forms to create almost like a unique and custom plywood. So this, for us, is very exciting also for its potential in future building interiors and finishes and furniture. And lastly, to go to the largest scale and going into buildings, I want to talk about a concept that we've derived as urban-rural, which I guess is a collaboration between us and many, many other experts and disciplines. And just to go back to when we were talking about all the problems, in city life, we're exposed to so many of them, right? Lack of green space, lack of connection to suburban life. We just said loneliness, food production, and vice versa. So the problem also, and we talk about this often in our research too, there is really no solution to any problem without educating the end user. And this problem is a global problem, so we need to approach it as the way that we should, depending on the demographics. So when we're looking at maybe New York City or Istanbul, where we're based at, the education component is so lacking is that circularity is not even a priority. The end user does not care where they live as long as the location is good or is it safe. So the priorities are different, but that doesn't mean we should be falling away from education in order to enable future circularity. So Urban Rural was a project that was created to bring suburban life into cities while incorporating green into the building to create micro-farming opportunities to not only maybe reduce food waste potentially in the future, but also educate the tenants and the user and the community there for them to be more aware of the food waste problem and sort of change their mindset over time. And the structure worked in a form that the irrigation system would work well with the gray water systems. And of course, the building itself also incorporated other sustainable measures. And the idea was also by bringing this concept into city life, we would reduce the carbon footprint that was created to travel to suburban areas that is often happening in Istanbul all the time. And with that, I just want to say that no matter what is the size and scale of our businesses, we need to always find ways to incorporate this into our mindset and to our projects and educate people as we're doing so. Thank you.
Many thanks again to all our contributors from last year and to you for listening and being part of this circular transition for the built environment. We really look forward to seeing you at the NDSM in Amsterdam this November. Do visit the website www.wastebuild.com and keep an eye out for the next release of content from the 2019 event and our brand new audio content coming soon. So until next time, stay safe and bye-bye.